Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of The Future Mind, the new series that I've started that looks at habits of the mind, mindsets, and traits that help us navigate a much faster changing world. So, when I was thinking about what topics to include in this series, I was actually a little hesitant to speak about something as, shall I say, soft and as non corporate as optimism. But in the end, in data we trust, and optimism has time and again shown up as a key requirement to being able to even see possibilities in the future that did not exist just yesterday. So here we go. In the 90s, a professor of psychology, Dr. Richard Wiseman, conducted a series of experiments. What he wanted to understand was how does considering yourself lucky or unlucky affect any task that you're given? So he recruited volunteers through a newspaper advertisement, and in his study, about 400 plus people participated, all the way ranging from 18 to somewhere in their 90s. And all the participants were asked a simple question: do you consider yourself lucky or do you consider yourself unlucky? And then given a problem to solve. So the problem was actually quite simple. They were given the day's newspaper and asked to count the number of photographs in the paper. Those who considered themselves unlucky counted the number of photographs in an average of about 2-ish minutes. But guess how much time those who considered themselves lucky took? Just a few seconds. Now you must be wondering, how is that even possible? Well, it turns out that at two places in the paper, on page 2 and midway through the paper, he placed an insert, actually printed on the page, that said, "Stop counting, there are 43 photographs in this paper." Those who considered themselves lucky spotted those notices either on the second page, which was most of them, or somewhere midway through the exercise. So on an average, they took just a few seconds, whereas those who considered themselves unlucky took on an average of 2 minutes. Now, how profound is that? You might have heard of the word reticular activating system in the last few years. It's really been there on social media. And that's really a part of our brain that acts as a filter. Now, here's the interesting thing. The stories we tell ourselves about the kind of world we're living in and the kind of world we expect to live in influence that filter. So if I'm someone who considers myself as extremely unlucky or considers the world to be a very dark place in general with only problems, then my brain, or rather that part of the brain, the reticular activating system, acts as the filter that gives me those pieces, allows me to notice exactly those pieces of information. On the other hand, if what I tell myself is that the world's, there's so much good in the world, there's so many possibilities, so many opportunities, I'm a lucky person, then I have somewhere trained that part of the brain, the RAS, the reticular activating system, to help me spot instances, people, opportunities who match that description. So the filter that in our brain allows us to filter out just a few from the thousands of signals around us is, believe it or not, programmable. And that's really why I speak about habits of the mind. So those of us who tell ourselves that there are opportunities everywhere, spot opportunities everywhere. Those of us who see problems and difficulties everywhere, train our brain to, in fact, see those difficulties everywhere. Now, if you're someone who is on the less sunny side of the scale and this is interesting to you, what is it that you can do about it? Well, the secret is right there. It's about what are the stories that we are telling ourselves. And it turns out there are two kinds of stories that are really important for the optimism scale. One is the story around the world in general. What kind of world are we living in? Are we living in a world that is getting better by the day, where there are many good things that happen to us every day? Or are we living in a world that's really getting much worse, where there are only problems, difficulties, challenges? So one is the story that we tell about the world we live in and our lives. The other story is the story we tell ourselves every time there's a challenge or a hard time in our life. Maybe we go through an accident, maybe we go through a health concern, maybe we go through a breakup or something extremely painful. What's the story that we tell ourselves about that incident? Um, Turns out that people who are on the sunnier side of the scale, more optimistic, tell themselves a story that all this is passing, it will pass. And then with that, we will go back to our default of, our lives are happy. On the other hand, for those who are much lower on the sunny side of the scale, the story tends to be, oh my goodness, why can't I ever get a break? Everything in my life has been so hard. And the more we tell ourselves that story, the more things stay hard. So, optimism as a habit of the mind actually has implications way beyond future mind. It has implications for our sense of well being, our levels of anxiety, our levels of happiness in life. But in the context of our professional capacity, it has a huge implication in how well can we see possibilities in a world that's changing much faster than the world we grew up in. So, if you found that useful, do share with your friends, family, and anyone else that you think would like to develop a future mind. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.